Here we are back with Duncan Tonatiuh. Aquí estamos de regreso con Duncan Tonatiuh.
So bilingual books are becoming more available, but nowhere near as available as books in English. What do you think still needs to change in publishing to better support bilingual and bicultural stories?
Um, well, this a little bit tangential, but I'll try and connect it at the end. You know, when I first started making books, I it was a way for me kind of to connect with my Mexican background, with my Mexican culture, that I began missing. I began feeling nostalgic about it when I moved to the US. But soon after I started making books, I learned a little bit more about the publishing industry and about how, there's hundreds of new titles that come out every spring, every fall for young readers, for children, for middle grade students. But of all those books, only a small amount of them, only a small percentage of them are about Latino children, about Black children, Asian American children. Even though there's so many different kinds of kids in schools in the United States, the books that are available don't really reflect that diversity. And I think it's very important to have books where different kinds of kids can see their stories reflected, their experiences reflected. Um, for me, one of my most powerful experiences as an author is some years ago, I wrote this book. Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote, or in Spanish, it's called Pancho Conejo y el Coyote. And it's a fable like the Little Red Riding Hood, but it's also an allegory of the dangers that migrants sometimes go through to reach the United States. And I had this very powerful experience when I was invited to read at a book festival from my book. But before I read, a group of students introduced me. And they said, this is Mr. Tonatiuh. He's made this book, Dear Primo. He's made this book, Diego Rivera, His World in Hours. His latest book is Pancho and the Coyote. And before he shares it with us, we want to share this video of this multi-voice poem we made. And maybe I can even share with you. Would you like me to share with you? Let me see if
Yes,
I can.
please.
Let's see if I can share my screen because this is something they did in their classroom with their teacher that I didn't do, but I think um, for me, um, I think it's very powerful. So let me just see here. Sorry. Um, all right. I hope you can see it and hear it.
I'm 10 years old. I'm in first grade. I live in the United States. I always have. I came here when I was a baby. Yo vine hace 2 años. My parents grew up in the United States, but my family speaks Spanish. My grandpa said they grew up very poor. My dad said there was no work in Mexico. In Honduras. In Guatemala. My mom said we could go to school in the United States and have the education she didn't get to have. My family decided that we will go. My best friend told me how he swam across the river. My mom told me how cold the water was and how she held me close because I was just a baby. My dad said he crashed this desert. He said he has no food, no water, no shoes, no money. That's how my Tio died. My mom tried to come here 3 times before she got across. I waited for her for a year. I came across it at night. We ran. We were quiet. We had nothing, just a phone number of my cousin who would come pick us up. Now we're here. Some of us were born here. Some of us were carried here as babies. Some of us just came here, apenas llegué. But we all want the same thing. To learn, to grow, to find our way. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a vet. I want to be a teacher. I want to be an artist. I want to be an author. Will you let me?
Wow, very powerful. It's
Yeah, and
amazing.
I always feel very moved when I see the video, and especially that first time they showed it to me. because it really kind of make me believe in this idea that, that it's important to have books where kids can see themselves reflected, their experience reflected, and definitely also their language. I think when kids, see a book that's in Spanish, and if they know Spanish, they get excited, it's motivated. They feel, proud, they feel empowered, so I think it's important to have multicultural literature. I think it's important to have books in Spanish and different languages, bilingual books. Um, because it helps kids know that their voices are important. And I think also because I think they can also be a way to learn about people that are different than ourselves. I think it's also important to have books about people that are maybe of a different race, of a different religion, of a different sexual orientation, so that when you meet them in real life, hopefully you'll be less scared of them. You'll have less prejudice towards them because you've kind of met them a little bit, understood them a little bit through books. So that's something that I'm very committed to. Um, and so after I started making books, I there was this big push and diversity in children's books. There was like, we need diverse books and different organizations. And it really felt that there was kind of more awareness of that idea and kind of publishers being kind of responsive to that. Um, I think unfortunately in the last years with all the kind of different politics, um, going on in the United States and all the book banning and all sorts of different challenges, that really feels like it's kind of swung back in the other direction. And I don't necessarily know from the publishers, and I know you're going to speak with editors and whatnot, so it'd be interesting to get their perspective. But just the kind of climate in general, feels very different, definitely right now than it did 5, 10 years ago for sure. Um, but I think as people that are interested in bilingual books and multicultural books, I think the thing we can do the best thing we can do is not just what the publishers do, but it's also what we can do is read them, if we can buy them. And if not, borrow them from your library and request them and ask for those books because, I think publishing companies are companies and they kind of respond to what people are asking for. So as I think it's important for us as readers to really ask for these books, and I think if we're asking them and we're consuming them and we're reading them, um, we'll continue to have more of these, or at least I'd like to believe so.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful response. And it's up to us also to promote. And what you mentioned about the visibility that the prizes and medals give to our books. It's also up to us to promote the books that include, not only bilingual but multicultural, and it's up to the people to be able to continue that, despite the forces that are,
And there's
that we're dealing with.
And sorry, and there's a big interest and a lot of places in the United States. I've had the opportunity to travel to sometimes I'm invited to visit different schools, different universities, and there's a lot of dual language programs in a lot of places
Yes.
in the United
Yes.
States. And so I think it's an opportunity. That's a really great opportunity. And they want books. I think
Yes.
now there's more, but, I think oftentimes they kind of different librarians, different teachers were a little frustrated that there weren't enough books in Spanish, that they all came
Absolutely.
maybe from Spain or from other countries where the language, I mean, it's Spanish, but it can be slightly different, or just the cultural references could be a little different. So I think there's definitely a market for it. There's also a need for it. I think all these different schools, I think it's wonderful that schools have dual programs and that promote being bilingual. For me, as someone that has been bilingual all my life, it's a great gift that has allowed me to, live in different countries, have friends in different countries, has given me job opportunities, education opportunities. So I think it's great to encourage that, and I think there's a lot of space for the growth of books in Spanish and for bilingual books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we need to take a lesson from Europe, in which everybody speaks at least 2 languages or more. It's very important, very important. Okay, I'm gonna have a question for you. How do you hope that your work will impact young readers? How do you hope that your body of work in general will impact young readers?
Um, I'm not sure. I think the things that I've noticed, when I've had the opportunity to share my books with kids is one, for them to feel proud, I think that's something that I notice often, that kids like get excited and like I said, they're like, I can relate to this story, or I know these words in Spanish, or, I think that it can be hopefully a motivation. And I think my books, they're meant for young readers, but I think a lot of people can kind of um, get something from them. Hopefully it can also be like a springboard to learn more about a topic, so for example, with Pancho Rabbit, it's a book for young kids, but I think older readers can read it and it can be a conversation about this, challenging topic of migration. But it's an important discussion to have, and so different books that I've done, hopefully they can be an opportunity for kids to learn more about that. It can be kind of a way to introduce them to different topics, whether it's an artist, um, my artwork, that is very much inspired by Mesoamerican art. When kids first see it, they think that's a little odd, and they always ask me, why are there ears like that? And why are there like nails always so round? But, if I show them the drawings that inspire that, then I think they kind of see the connection and hopefully get interested in it. And hopefully it motivates them to learn a little bit more about Mesoamerican art, or at least to know there's different kinds of artwork, that there's not just
Yes.
one way of making art, and that maybe if they're Latino, maybe that they come from this long tradition of bookmaking and of image makers. So I don't know, those are some of the things that hopefully kids will get out of my
Well,
book.
they're wonderful things. Thank you. You hit very much the right points. Okay, let's go on. I think Alicia has our next question.
Yes, our audience includes teachers and librarians. Do you know of any unique challenges that these two groups face that you have that you would like to address?
Well, definitely the book banning is something that is, like my books, I've been very lucky, and some of them have received awards. But for example, Separate is Never Equal, which is my most famous book, it's definitely been challenged or banned in some places. Um, and I think I think I feel I have a lot of, like what word can I use? I guess compassion, or I'm not sure what to say, but I like it's the ones that really, for me, it's unfortunate, but the ones that really suffer because of this are librarians, are really teachers, because they're the ones in the front lines. They're the ones that are having to make decisions and deal with their administration and with parents and whatnot. Um, and I think it's really unfortunate that this is happening, that this has been happening for the last few years. Um, I think I don't claim that my books are perfect, and I think there's always things that can be better. And I think parents, if they see something in a book that they don't think is appropriate for their child, I think it's okay to be like, I don't know if my kid should be reading this. But I think it's a very different thing to say no one should be reading this and banning access to everyone else. I don't think that that's right. And I think librarians, I think teachers, they study, they put years of their life into learning about books and about how to use them with children and what themes to talk about. So I think we have to kind of trust in their expertise, because this is what they have dedicated their life to. Um, I would say that I think there's some organizations that are helping people navigate some of these challenges. There's, for example, Pen America has done a lot of research into book banning and just kind of keeping track of where it's happening and who's funding it. Because I think it's very clear that it's a very politically motivated issue. Um, there's, for example, an organization that I like called everylibrary.org that has a lot of information on whether you want to donate, whether you want to call your congressperson, or just kind of, they have a lot of resources for people to actually do something about it. So if you're a teacher, if you're a librarian that are kind of dealing with some of these challenges, I would encourage you to check them out, because I think there's useful information that people have kind of been figuring out, and how to how to deal with that. But yeah, that's something that I've noticed, and that I think it's unfortunate. I think, like I said before, there's such the amount of multicultural books is already so small, and those books tend to be the ones that get, challenged,
Yes.
get attacked. So that makes it even more difficult, which can be very disheartening. But I think it's very important to have those kinds of books available.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you for that. I think it is a very important topic. And talking about audiences, another group that I mean, you mentioned the parents a little bit ago, and that there are also another the group that we are trying to reach with this podcast. And one of the challenges that we see in parents is that a lot of them, or many of them, struggle with maintaining their native language in their children when they come to the US, for example. Why do you feel this is, and what advice would you offer these parents?
well, I grew up bilingual. I grew up in Mexico, so everything around me was in Spanish. But my father, who was American, always talked to me in English. Since I was, as ever since I can remember, I always remember speaking with him in English. That's all my memories. I always spoke with him in English. And even as an adult, I always spoke with him in English, even if everyone else was speaking Spanish around us. So I think that helped me kind of have it clear, that I always spoke in English, and I wasn't ashamed. And for example, with my children, um, I speak to them in Spanish always. Always, 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 always. I always speak with them in Spanish. My wife speaks to them in English. And so then I think that also kind of keeps it clear. And sometimes they'll speak to me in English, but I'll keep speaking with them in Spanish too, so that hopefully it'll just be something natural that they do. I think that, I mean, I'm not like a linguist expert, but in my experience, that's something that has helped to be very consistent, you know? Um, and I think another thing that can help a lot is reading. I try and read with my children. Like at night, it's one of my favorite things to do before bedtime. I'll lay down with them, and we read a book, and we spend 30 minutes reading, and I enjoy it because I want to read the chapter and I want to know what's going to happen next. And so if you can read in Spanish with your children, I think that's great. That will also, they will keep absorbing the language. If you can have books in Spanish around, borrow them from the library, or if you have books around the house. I think one of the reasons why I'm a writer is because I was a reader. And one of the reasons that I was a reader is because there were books around. My dad had books, my mom had books in their shelves, and I would be like, what is this? And I would just pull something, and grab it. So I think books cannot be like these precious things that we don't touch. I think it's important to have them around and to be able to grab one, and maybe you give a kid a book and maybe they don't read it at that moment, but maybe a few months later they pull it from the shelf and what was this about or something. Um, so I think having books in Spanish around can also help. And I think being consistent with the language are two things that I think can be helpful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Along those lines, what happens when parents who are not bilingual, they don't speak the second language? How do you think that they can still engage their children using bilingual books if they are not fluent in the second language that the bilingual book is introducing? What advice would you give to parents that are monolingual?
I mean, well, I think just because the parent is monolingual doesn't mean that the child cannot be bilingual. And so, I was invited to visit some schools recently in San Antonio, and I saw a lot of cases uh, or several cases where the parent was monolingual, but their child was bilingual because they were part of a dual language program, um, which I think is wonderful. Uh, and I think, yeah, finding those opportunities, letting them borrow those books, finding those books for them, finding programs where I can practice both languages, opportunities to speak with people that speak another language. if you can travel somewhere where people also speak Spanish or a different language, and you can practice, I guess, opportunities to practice the second language that you're learning. Um, and I don't know, with books, um, I think books, maybe like the ones that I do or that other authors do that maybe they're in English, but that they have some words, some phrases in Spanish can be also an opportunity to sort of build up, and to kind of figure out some things from context. Um, I'm not quite sure. Those are some things that come to mind.
No, you've hit such important points. Travel, exposure. I think the bilingual books that you mentioned that have the text in English, in Spanish introduced into the English. One of the other things is for the parent to learn along with the child, to show interest in the language that is being introduced and learn together. And I think that that's important too. But you said is absolutely true. Introduce the child to other cultures as much as possible, and certainly foster that. Foster that.
Music, I
Thank you
think
so
music can
much.
be great. Um, like
Yes,
the Portuguese, like I said, I speak it okay, but whenever I have a chance to watch a show in Portuguese, a movie in Portuguese, I kind
there. Mm-hmm.
I remember stuff, I learn new stuff. So definitely, if you're gonna let your kids watch a movie, maybe put it in Spanish or whatnot, maybe go watch it with them or something. Just those different opportunities that can kind of encourage, I think can be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Thank you very much. Okay. I think we're coming up to our last question, right, Alicia?
Question. Do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, I have a new book coming out in the fall, and I don't have the actual physical book of it yet. It's that one, Vida, the mice, the cat, and the alebrije, or in español, Vida, los ratones, el gato y el alebrije. But I can show you some images from it. So let me grab it really quick.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make him co-host again along with you. Let me see if I can do that. Um,
I have proofs. When I make a book, they'll send me proofs to make sure the color and
okay,
everything
I
looks
think you
right.
can share. Claudia just
And they're
shared
on they're physical proofs.
oh, he's going to share physical proof. Okay. Okay.
You
I
know,
thought he was.
this is awesome.
This is
We're getting to have the first speak in our
I
podcast
know.
of Duncan
I know.
Donatiuh's book. This
I'm
is
so excited.
exciting.
This is great.
I did not expect that. So
Um,
I showed a
Yeah.
little slide just showing the
Yeah, we
cover
just showed a
of
slide
Vida.
with the
But
cover,
this
but
beats it. This
this
is
is
better.
better. This is better.
so yeah,
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my
it says
God.
Vida,
How
the mice,
lovely.
the cat, and the alebrije. And I'll just show you a few pages, but it's about this town called Maustepec, which is very
Austepec.
colorful. And Vida and Maximo, and those are my kids' names. They help their mom sell the piñatas that she makes at the mercado. Um, and
Wait. Which ones are your kids' names?
Vida y Máximo.
Oh, Vida y Máximo. Oh my gosh, this is so special.
Beautiful. This is great.
Thank you, thank you. And they oh my God, I lost another page. 1 second, sorry, it's a little disorganized.
And
That's
Um,
for our
okay.
viewers, this is how picture books get created. So we first get
Yes.
a proof print, and it comes on just flat spreads, different sizes depending on your printer, but this is part of the process.
and so Maustepec is very musical. There's always music on the weekends. Vida's father plays the trumpet with his banda. You can see him there. There's always all these fiestas full of fireworks, full of cohetes. But then
Oh
someone
my
shows
God. Wow. I cannot wait. Oh,
That
look at
is
the big
beautiful.
cat. Is
that
that a
shows
cat?
up,
A scary cat?
Yes, that's a cat.
and he starts terrorizing the mice, chasing them at all hours of the day.
What a treat. Oh
At
my
first,
gosh.
he only chases them at night, but soon he starts to do so at all hours of the day. And Maustepec, which was very colorful, very happy, very
Now it's
joyful,
not.
becomes very gray, very
Ooh.
dull, because all the mice are scared to leave their homes.
Wow.
There's the cat.
I love the color change.
For me,
You're
Yes,
changing the mood for us here. So that's amazing.
absolutely.
yes.
Yes.
So then the mice have to come up with a plan to deal with this cat that has been terrorizing their town. And so they can bring the joy, the alegría, the color back to Mostepec. And if you want to
I
find out how they do it, you have to get the book in
You will
November.
have to get the book. We will, absolutely. After this, I'm hooked.
Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Um, well, this ends our interview segment, and it takes us into what we call the rapid fire questions. So,
Okay.
rapid fire question, drum roll. I'm noisy. So, Duncan, you have about 90 seconds, not to put too much pressure on you. We're going to ask you a question each, and they're simple. Just answer what comes to mind first, what you think of it first. And for our listeners, he doesn't know the questions. The very first one is, what's one fact about you that even your biggest fans might not know?
Oh my God. Hmm. I don't know. I mean, maybe that I like doing capoeira. Some people probably know, but I don't know. That was the first thing that came to mind.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Perfect.
Well, you gave us a lot of facts today, how you spoke English with your father. That
Well, I
was
know
very
one.
interesting.
My father's name was Skidmore, which is not a common
Common.
name. I don't know any other Skidmore. And Skidmore graduated in 1969 from Columbia University, and he drove his van down with his long hair and his big beard, and he was supposed to be traveling around Mexico for a month, and he stayed for the next 50 years, the rest of his life. So I don't know if people know that about me.
Good for him. Good for him, Duncan. And I can identify with the long hair and the yeah, I'm that generation there. So I certainly can see Skidmore in his van, probably covered with peace symbols and daisies and flowers. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A
Bandana.
VW van. And the bandana. Okay, I have one rapid fire question too. If others were to describe you in one, two, or three words, what would they say?
Um, I don't know. Observant, maybe?
Certainly, that's a good one. And I think that's very reflective of your personality. You watch and you see. And I think that's why it's been a basis for your success, definitely. Yeah, so observant is a good one. Okay, the last rapid fire is from Alicia.
All right. What book or books have had the most impact on your life?
I don't know. It's interesting because different books at different times. One book that I really liked as a teenager and that I remember having a big impact was The Labyrinth of Solitude by Octavio Paz, which it's all about kind of like the Mexican psyche and the different kind of historical events that have happened, how that kind of shaped the character of the Mexican people. And so I was just fascinated when I read it. And it's a book that I really, really like. And it has this great essay comparing like the United States with Mexico that I encourage people to check out. Um, kind of like of the personalities of the different two countries and why that is. Um, but then there's others, definitely as an author, one that really motivated me was a book called El Llano en Llamas by Juan Rulfo, which is a Mexican author. And it's short stories, but he wrote with very vernacular language, all in the first person. And it's the first time I noticed that in a book. And when I saw it, he does it so incredibly well that it made me want to write in that style. I wanted to write like a short story that was told in the first person with very vernacular language, like someone standing here next to you telling you the story. Um, it was a book that really motivated me to want to write as a teenager.
Wonderful.
Fabulous answer. Thank you so, so much again. This closes our interview with you, our podcast with you, Duncan. So we really appreciate it. We
Look at
social
this
media.
body of work. I think it's a fantastic body of work. You said you've been writing for 15 years. I think people who have been writing for longer may not even have this many books published with this many accolades that you have gathered in the last 15 years. And you certainly have, Duncan, you certainly have you can see from this slide, you have a variety of things, which is great because I know that you have books that are for the very, very, very young on colors, just colors. And it goes all the way to books with very deep topics like Undocumented. And then you have all the whole gamut, biographies, everything. So you're obviously a very talented author illustrator, and we are privileged to have been able to hear you today and hear your words.
That's very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I love making books, and hopefully I'll continue to do it for a long, long time. I
Yes.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to our guests, thank you very much for joining us in this podcast today. Podcast and webcast. Our social media handles are on the screen as well. Where you can find that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can see when our next podcast is coming up. You can be among the first ones. And we, just like Duncan, we have a number of other authors, illustrators, and people doing amazing picture books and all kinds of children books, but with the focus on bilingual and bilingualism. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, co-host, for being wonderful co-host. And Duncan, thank you again.
Gracias, gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.